Welcome to Central News for Friday 26th of July. I'm Amy Forrest. In today's news, muddy stage floors and rain-soaked dances are some of Pina Bush's boundary-breaking works that have influenced dancers forever. A documentary about her life is part of a film series for the University of Waikato on Thursday 1st of August, where Dr. Karen Barber will talk in detail about the piece. She says the series is a unique experience where anyone can learn more about the film.
Well, I think if you're passionate about moving images, and of course many of us are, and you're excited about different films like documentaries or 3D adventures like the film Pina, then this is a really good opportunity to come and hear some people who will tell you their take, their different ideas, their different interpretations, and share some of their passion for film with you.
The hard summer graft on land and in the water will be celebrated at the annual Bay of Plenty and Coromandel Surf Lifesaving Awards of Excellence this Saturday. The awards at Trinity Wharf Hotel from 6:30 p.m. celebrate the 2012-2013 surf lifesaving season and the achievement of its membership. Surf Lifesaving New Zealand Ambassador Lifeguard and singer-songwriter Jamie McDowell will attend and perform at the ceremony. Surf Lifesaving Regional Manager Chris Emmett says the event is about recognising the commitment and achievements of the volunteer lifeguards. Now for our region's weather. Hamilton, your weekend kicks off with sunny spells on Saturday, a high of 15 and a chilly overnight low of 1. And Tauranga, you also have a sunny Saturday ahead with a high of 16 and a low of 5. Sunday brings sunny spells with southwest breezes for you, Hamilton, a high of 15 and a low of 1. And a clear, fine day for Tauranga on Sunday with southwesterlies easing. You have a high of 15 and a low of 5. Just ahead, last chance for the flu vaccine. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. If you haven't yet had your flu jab, you have just a few days left to get this free immunisation. Hilary Entwistle caught up with Anita Bell to find out more.
So there's several different categories. The most probably they're over 65, so it's all for free, or who has chronic conditions. And those chronic conditions, there's a big list, but in general it's people with cancer, people with heart disease, people with respiratory disease, and also those who are pregnant. So pregnant women can go and get their vaccine for free. Since March, they've also added another little category, and it's for children who are under 5 who've had a respiratory illness that's meant that they've had to be hospitalised, or where the GP they've obviously sort of been to the GP quite a few times with a respiratory illness. So those are the main categories, but obviously if people are wondering whether they're eligible, then the best thing is to obviously give their GP a ring, talk to the practice nurse, or even phone us at Population Health and we can help them with that.
How much does it cost then if we're not eligible for free?
I think it's around about $9 for the vaccine, but then there's obviously the administration charge, which is around $20. So I suppose anything from maybe from $30 to $40 would probably be about the right price if you don't meet the eligibility criteria.
How does the vaccine work?
So vaccines work really, so they boost your immunity, so they act like the virus would in our body, so it just mimics how the virus would react. It's the same reaction as a normal virus would react in the body. And what it does is, I always make this sort of analogy that in terms of when you have you've already got now an army. So when you're vaccinated, it creates antibodies, and those antibodies are specific to the flu virus, or the flu viruses, specific ones in the vaccine. So what it is that you've almost got an army camped ready to react when the virus hits your body from outside. If you don't have that in the vaccine, it doesn't mean that you won't make that army, but it will take you 3 or 4 days. So it's like you're going to have to go and chase the soldiers down. You've got to get them, ship them overseas, and get them into camp for them ready to fight. So it does take a few days. So even if you're fit and well, you still don't have those antibodies specifically to those influenza viruses for at least a few days. So it gives you that time, and obviously we want to be able to fight the virus as soon as it gets in before it replicates within your cells. So any vaccine, whether it's for bacteria or virus, will work that's how they work. So it's causing a natural reaction in your body to what normally happens, but it's speeding it up. It's giving you that few days of, sort of ability to fight.
How long then until we're completely immune?
Studies look at that and they think, probably around 5 days for some immunity, but I think for full protection and full immunity, around 2 weeks to say, which is what we generally would say to most people.
Have we hit the influenza season yet?
We're in flu season, but we haven't quite hit the peak of flu season. In general, it does vary from year to year, but most years it seems to, usually we've got high numbers of flu around August, and obviously that varies in terms of how high that number is. Last year we had quite a high year, and it was around August to the end of August where we got high numbers. But the year before that was a little more of a sort of a slower peak, and it didn't quite reach the heights, but it lasted a little bit longer. So it was a bit sort of more towards the beginning of July and then on into September. So it does vary, but it's all usually it is usually in winter.
What can be the complications of influenza?
So influenza, obviously you can just get the viral pneumonia, which is obviously caused by the virus, but you can also get what we call secondary bacterial pneumonias. So you sort of got a weakened immunity, I suppose, and therefore other bacteria that may be not around, not sort of there when normally would sort of add on to that. In general, you can get sort of quite bad sinusitis, quite bad ear infections, which are the main things. But obviously if anyone is already got chronic diseases, chronic conditions, then it just kind of exacerbates those, which can be as bad as the influenza-like symptom.
Who is the most vulnerable then to develop those conditions?
Well, the most vulnerable are by obviously those who are eligible for the free vaccine. So anyone with those chronic conditions that we've already spoken about, so the cancer, heart disease, and also we did find, particularly around in the pandemic season 2009, that pregnant women were obviously did have a higher risk of complications from the influenza, so that's why that has been offered as free vaccine to them since then.
What about asthmatics?
Asthmatics are, and obviously they come under lung conditions, but in general it seems to be that those are those who take regular preventative therapy. So there's a varying degree of severity for asthma. Some people who have asthma, but it only comes on every so often, whereas there are some who have to take sort of quite regular, and the GPs and your respiratory physicians will know that, and they will be the ones that be recommending that they have the vaccine. So if in doubt and you have asthma, then the best thing to do is, discuss that with your primary care doctor.
How do we know then when we have the flu and not just the cold?
It is a hard one, I think, and in general, the influenza varies in terms of its severity of symptoms, and they are really quite similar. What we generally think about is that if you've got influenza, it's probably going to last a bit longer than a couple of days. And it's also going to be probably the symptoms are going to be much more severe, so a lot worse. And in particular, we talk about the fever, and that with colds, you tend not to have tend to be quite so feverish, don't tend to have so much of a temperature, where with flu, that's probably one of those ones where we think, actually, if you've got a really bad fever, then it is possibly more likely to be influenza. They both are more common at this time of year, so it is hard. And obviously the aches and pains are more likely to be with influenza, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're not with the colds. And runny noses, sore throats obviously can be variant. So we usually say severity of symptoms and duration of symptoms. So if it's lasting a long time, you're not getting rid of it, and it is really quite bad, then it's probably influenza.
After the break, how you can help save lives from the rare PNH disease. Welcome back. PNH is a serious, very rare disease which affects people in their early adult life, drastically reducing both quality of life and life expectancy. There is a life-saving treatment funded in more than 40 countries, but not New Zealand. Founding member of PNH Support Daniel Webby tells us how you can help bring the treatment to New Zealand.
Tell us about the submissions.
So currently underway is a consultation process which PHARMAC, the government's medicines buying agency, has launched in relation to the treatment that we're seeking. So that submission, or that consultation process, is essentially asking the public to provide their opinion on whether or not they think this treatment should be funded. Pharmac are saying that they would like to decline funding, and so what we've been asking people to do is look through the information we've put together and make an informed response on that question of whether or not the treatment should be funded. There aren't any questions being asked about whether or not the treatment is effective. Essentially, Pharmac are saying it's effective, but they believe it's not cost effective. So they're saying cost is the problem.
So how can we submit?
If you were to visit our website, so that's www.pnhsanz.org.nz. If you visit the website, or you just Google PNH New Zealand, you'll come up with our website, which directs you through the process. It even provides a submission template. The idea being that, you know, we've got some very simple points that we're trying to make about equity and fairness, about making sure that, you know, all patients, all people that need treatment should be able to access that treatment. So we're essentially framing our argument in light of a sense of fairness for all New Zealanders. But people are welcome to read through what we've put online, to read through what Pharmac have put in their sort of consultation document, and make their own minds up about what the situation is and you know, how they feel. I guess we'd encourage people to look at it through the eyes of someone they know or love, basically to think about, you know, a situation where someone has a disease, there is a treatment which is entirely effective in stopping that disease in terms of shortening life and also the ongoing symptoms of the condition, and yet the government is essentially saying, well, unfortunately you don't get access. And also putting in context of internationally, the treatment's funded in around 40 countries, including Australia, Canada, UK, you know, Japan, Thailand, Taiwan, even many parts of the Middle East. Turkey is one of the countries that fund, all through Europe. You know, it's not, you know, it's kind of not such a question mark as it seems to be here in this country. So we really just want people to, yeah, make an informed decision, but also to think about it in terms of if it was someone that they knew that was affected by the disease, what would they want to happen?
What is PNH?
So PNH stands for paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria. It's a sort of long, it's a mouthful of a word, but the disease itself is characterised by excessive destruction of red blood cells. I'm not a medical expert, but essentially there's a process which happens in the bone marrow itself, which means that the red blood cells are produced sort of abnormally, so they don't look the same to the body as a healthy blood cell, and in return the immune system destroys those blood cells as they get produced. So there's this constant turnover of red blood cells. Sort of the daily effects of that are sort of lethargy and fatigue. You know, the red blood cells are the ones that carry the hemoglobin, that carry the oxygen, essentially. So a general kind of malaise and feeling sort of unwell. There are other symptoms such as sort of severe abdominal cramps, which can kind of be caused by small clots that develop in the abdominal walls. There is I guess the most serious impact for the patient is essentially the blood clots, which are a kind of a consequence of this ongoing and constant destruction of red blood cells. So when the body's processing all of this kind of waste material, and the result over time is that essentially it kind of overwhelms the system and results in clots, which can happen in almost any organ. I mean, quite often it's within the renal system, so the kidneys is a common place. A lot of patients end up with kidney and liver failure. They can also end up in the brain, clots that happen in the brain, stroke. And it happens relatively quickly. The sort of average life expectancy is around 10 years. So after diagnosis, survival is around 10 years. Patients will go on sometimes longer. I mean, 1 in 3 will die within 5 years. I guess that's the other statistic, which is quite scary. It's not everyone. Some people live with it for a long time, and I've spoken to a couple of patients here in New Zealand who have struggled with the disease for 20 plus years, and it's kind of heartbreaking because they talk about how this disease has basically robbed them of their life. They've not been able to work. They struggle after doing sort of the morning chores, and they need to kind of have a rest to recuperate and get back into just doing sort of day-to-day tasks. So it's a real, and this treatment that we're seeking is essentially, it gives people not just back this normal life expectancy, it gives them back their quality of life, day to day. And that's why it's funded around the world. It is an expensive treatment. We acknowledge it's an expensive treatment. Even within PHIMAC, they put the patient numbers requiring treatment at around 13. So it's a very small group of people that need this very highly effective treatment. But it completely transforms patients' lives, and it completely gives them back their day-to-day quality of life, and also, up to 20 years survival. So when you're talking about patients on average being diagnosed in their mid-30s, and the average life expectancy of around 10 years post-diagnosis, this treatment, with it normalising life expectancy, it gives people back 20 plus years of life, which, if you're a youngish person, my mid-30s or early 30s, but the thought of losing 20 years of life when there's a treatment that could prevent that from happening is pretty hard to accept. So.
You can email submissions before 31st of July by visiting the website pnhsanz.org.nz. After the break, Hamilton Halo. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. Hamilton Halo aims to bring native birds back into the city. In its 5th year, the project coincides with Bio Month, and this year you can get involved by snapping some of your favourite birds. Hilary found out more.
Tell us about the competition.
Well, for the month of July, Hamilton Halo are running a photo competition, and what we're after is people's best snaps of their tui, bellbird or kiriru. This is the 3rd time we've run it, and we get really good results from it. And so far this year's looking to be as positive as other years. This year we've used the photo competition to launch Biosecurity Month. Biosecurity Month also runs for the month of July, and the Halo competition was highlighting how biosecurity is necessary for biodiversity.
What are some of the prizes that you guys have got this year?
We've got some really great prizes this year. There's 2 categories. The first one is the overall winner, and to help us judge that, we've got the chief photographer from the Waikato Times coming to help us. And that winner gets a blown up picture of their winning photo on a canvas, so they can proudly display that somewhere, and they also get an annual family pass to the Hamilton Zoo, so they can go as many times as they like within that year. The second category is the People's Choice Award, and that's where we'll load probably the 5 top photos up on our Facebook page and get the public to vote on which is their favourite. And the People's Choice Award winner gets a awesome wildlife photography book by award winner Trevor Penfold.
And where does the Halo extend to?
So the Halo refers to a ring of forest sites around Hamilton, and they're all approximately 20 kilometres from the city. And the reason we've chose sites that are 20 kilometres away is because Landcare Research did some study about how far tui would fly in search for food, and roughly around 20 kilometres was their daily distance of how far they'd fly. So we found forest blocks are roughly around 20 kilometres from Hamilton, and in those sites we do intensive rat and possum control just prior to the breeding season so that we get more chicks surviving and more tui coming into the city.
How can we enter?
So we need you to email us your best shot. We need it to be good quality so that if you win it can go on the canvas nicely. It closes at the end of July, so there's only one more week to get that in. The email address to send it to is halo@waikatoregion.govt.nz, but all the details are on our website if you need to look.
Why does the council want to hold this competition? Why is it so important to get that word out there?
Well, as I said before, this year it's a bit special because we've used it as an interactive launch for Biosecurity Month. But in general, we use it just to make people aware of the Halo project and how they can possibly be involved and the great success that we're getting with Hamilton Halo. And also just to get people out in their backyards looking at birds and becoming more appreciative of what they've got. Yeah.
Part of this project, the Halo project, is to research patterns of birds. Have any patterns come out from the project in the previous years?
So what we know is that the tui generally come into the city over winter, and that's when the food sources out in the forest blocks run out generally. The natives are generally flowering between late summer, early autumn, over summer, autumn, and so when those run out, they're thinking, what else can I have? And in the city we've got lots more exotics which flower over winter, and so they come into the city over winter for those extra food sources.
How do you think that we can encourage these birds back to the city?
So definitely by planting food sources for them, and especially trees that flower over winter. But the key thing which stops the tui staying in the city is predation of the nests by rats, possums, cats, stoats, for example. So the best way that we can get them to stay and live in the city and breed here, rather than flying back home every night, is to make sure we keep those pest numbers really low. Hamilton City are kickstarting that really soon with some pest control through the gullies and parks in Hamilton, so that'll be a good start, but we also need private landowners, especially if they back onto gullies, to hopefully do their part too. And so if they want to do anything, they're welcome to give us a call and grab some advice about that.
What are the estimated numbers of some of these birds in the city?
It's really hard to tell because they're so transient. They fly in and out on a daily basis and quite large distances. But what we do know is that a Hamilton City bird count survey, which is done every 2 years by Landcare Research, is showing that each time they do the count, the numbers are growing hugely. And the other thing we use is our citizen science, which is basically the public reporting the sightings. And as an example, in 2007 we had 40 public reportings, and in 2009 that was nearly 500. So we think that's telling that more and more are being seen here. So.
Now you're looking for photos of bellbirds as well. Are they quite rare, and what do they look like?
They're actually not too rare. They are quite widespread, but they're much, much harder to see than, for example, a tui or a kiridu, which are so standout and iconic. They're very small, they're quite green and brown, so they just blend into the background rather than a tui, which is black and has the white tuft. And so they're much, much harder to spot. But saying that, they're probably not in the city in great numbers at the moment. They have a more of a lag time in recovery than the tui. The tui is a good indicator. It'll show up pretty much straight away. A bellbird has more of a lag time in building its numbers back up. We do know that they're recovering out in the forest blocks where we do the pest control, but we're still waiting to see them flourish in the city, but we're hoping that'll happen.
What kind of foods do they eat?
Very similar to nectar, they're called honey eaters, so they feed on nectar and flowers and things like that. So hopefully we'll see similar results sometime soon.
To enter, email your best photo to halo@waikatoregion.gov.nz. That is the news for today and this week. If you want to get involved, like us on Facebook and let us know your views. If you have any local stories, including your own video or photos, go to our website and hit upload. Thanks for joining us. Hilary will be back on Monday with more guests from in and around the region. I'm Amy Forrest. Have a lovely evening and enjoy the weather this weekend.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.